Tina Hoxie, and I'm the Associate Provost, and I'm the Dean of Students. And what I'm going to cover with you this morning has to do with our code of conduct and what your accountability would be while you're traveling on this study away program. You're actually in a class, a registered class, so as a result of that, you're held to the same standards, rules, and regulations that you would be just as if you were on campus. So I want to go through that with you a little bit and give you a sense of what that means for you, what it could mean if something happens, what the college action would be, so that you've heard everything. Certainly, I recommend that you read through the brochure so that you have an idea of, and I would bet that none of you have ever read the code of conduct. So that won't surprise me at all. Chances are students don't read that until something happens. And then they realize that, oh, that wasn't something that, could happen, or I'm going to be accountable and be responsible for that. First, I want to say congratulations. I think Study Away is a really unique opportunity for students to go on. Myself personally, I did 3 Study Aways when I was in college. Now, nothing against your classes, but I can tell you every experience I had on those trips, and I can't really tell you every experience I had in a class, because I do think Study Away is life-changing. So you have a great opportunity to have a great time and to learn a great deal from your professors, from one another, and from the culture and the experience that you're going to have. So I know that you'll enjoy it. And so for our piece of it, it's a matter of making you aware. We all know times are different, right? We're not living when I was in the 80s and I traveled, and what it was like, even on college campuses. College campus today is not like it was in the 80s. In terms of accountability, in terms of things that are heard, and what action is taken, things are very, very different. And the reason for that is for the protection and safety of everyone. For starters, I'd like you to read through that. There's also a Title IX brochure that Mike is going to hand out, which is another one that covers our sexual assault policy here at the college. Talks about action, talks about how you could report. One of the things that it's important to know is that if something were to happen on the trip, if there's an incident, the professor will call either the campus police department or call me. And if it's something that falls within these regulations, within this brochure, and including Title IX, what will happen is we will discuss what's going on. If it's low level and it can be managed by the professor on site, that will happen. If it cannot be managed, and that's, I'm not going to expect a lot from the professors. They've put a lot of time and energy and planning and putting this together for you to have a great experience, and really, they don't have to take on other things that fall within this code of conduct. So what would happen is if there is something egregious or something happens that we feel that students aren't safe, you're not safe, or something has happened that you need to be removed from the trip, you will come back at your own cost. Okay? So you need to understand that. I just want to be very frank, and I want to be very honest. When things happen, and I see it happen all the time, not all the time, but certainly in my role, lots of things during the course of the academic year at the college, and sometimes when something happens in a classroom here on campus, that disrupts the whole learning and all the students in a class, and you're in the very same circumstance with that. I'm going to touch a little bit on, and I think Chief Whitman's going to talk more about safety, more so than what I would, and then also in terms of traveling internationally. Certainly there's some caveats to that are very different today. What we want is we want you to have a great time, we want you to be safe, and we want this experience to be equal and the same for everyone. So you need to think about that. Think about what you want out of the trip and what that means. The drinking age, it may be different. Those of you going to New York, the drinking age is the same, last I checked. But if you're going to Morocco, I have no idea.
It's a Muslim country, so drinking is not really a part of the culture.
Okay, okay. What
I love
we
this trip.
have done on other trips is if you were of a legal age of drinking in a social setting, that can happen. But again, you've got to follow all the local laws and rules of that particular area. But understand, with that, that means that your behavior when you're under the influence is the behavior that you're accountable for. So keep that in mind. I mentioned the process for reporting any conduct issues or a concern that the professor might have. Those will be, formal reports that will come forward. We'll advise them with, depending upon the circumstance, with the consultation of the chief of police. But I think the main thing is, if you look at kind of the code of conduct, it's all, in a lot of ways, pretty practical, of kinds of things that affect you and affect others. So, again, we ask that you keep as your primary focus this experience that you want to have, what it can mean for you when you're on this trip and for your future. Because I wouldn't want anybody to jeopardize what their next experiences would be at the college. Because certainly we have the ability, going to college is a privilege, and when certain things happen and things create safety issues, we do have the ability to remove students temporarily, permanently, for the safety and respect for everyone. Okay, so I ask you to make smart decisions. It's fun to be in a new place. It's fun to experience different things that you've never seen and felt and smelled and tasted and all of that. I know that you'll have a great time. So if you do have questions prior to going, feel free to make a contact with me. I'd be happy to talk with you. And I wish for all you a great trip.
Thank you.
Is this the right time for us to do this? And we've consciously made the decision collectively, absolutely. Okay, so we've been in, and we've had lots of conversations with the program directors and so on with these trips. So know that this isn't just, we're ignoring what's going on in the world. We've actually made conscious decisions. We've done the research. So I'm going to set that piece of it aside a minute, because next week we're going to have a special agent with the FBI come in who's trained specifically in civilian response to violent or active shooters, or wide range of things that have been in the news, to give you an idea of what, as a civilian, you would do to respond to those, to better protect yourself. Okay? So I'm not really going to touch too much on that big national news stuff. I'm going to switch to other national news stuff, international news stuff. Natalie Holloway. Does that name mean anything to anybody in here? Who was Natalie Holloway?
She was a girl that went missing in Aruba.
Correct. And do you know what kind of a trip she was on?
She on a school trip.
Senior class trip. Okay. Never heard from again. That's the type of incident that, my opinion, you have control over. By using simple, normal safety measures that we would ask you to use here on campus, or when going to the mall, or going to a movie late at night, or going out running in your neighborhood. The same types of personal safety tips that we want you to use here, we want you to magnify there. Don't ever find yourself alone someplace. Don't choose to go out on a run by yourself, or to go check out a park or an area nearby the hotel. The rules that your instructors have in place for you are proven to work. They will keep you safe, they will bring you home, and they will have you enjoy a great trip. Okay, so follow those rules and you will come home. I know that Dean Hoxie mentioned, if you do something wrong, you'll come home at your own expense. There's another part of what can happen on a trip, and that's why we have you fill out all that emergency paperwork and contact information. There can be a problem back home. And know that if there is something that happens back home, that you are needed to get home quickly. We will work with your instructors in the school and so on to make that happen. It has happened before, so Mike Shavy and your instructors have a great plan in place to work with the rest of our administration to make that happen, to get you home. So if your family has concerns here, they'll have contact information that they can reach us here at the school. Does that, everybody understand how that works both ways? She is our Clery officer now, and Clery GRCC is a federal law that requires colleges to report crimes on our website and to you and to the Department of Education on an annual basis. We don't just report crimes that happen here on our campus. We have to report certain types of crimes that happen in locations where our students are traveling, whether it's our basketball team, baseball team, or our study abroad trips. So if you're staying in hotels off campus for more than 2 nights, we have to request crime statistics from those locations, those jurisdictions from where you stayed. Not all the places you visit. So if while you're there, you're not a victim of a crime, but you know of something major that happened, say, in the hotel, please make sure your instructors are made aware of it so we know we're looking for something. If you saw the police in the lobby of your hotel, let your instructors know. Because then they can just send me a note, hey, I don't know why they were here, but we can be more direct in what we're asking for from the jurisdiction that you're traveling to. So it's a violation of the federal law if we don't ask that jurisdiction for their crime stats. And that includes Morocco and Costa Rica and France and Germany and all these places that we go. Many of them, but it kind of goes back even to some of our general Title IX training as far as bystander intervention. If you're with a friend and you see that friend that's about to make some poor choices, step in. That's kind of our responsibility now. We don't get to just look at it and say, oh, that's just, they're just being kids, or I'm not getting in the way of that, she'll get mad at me. No, it is our responsibility to step in if we see our friends that are going down a path that could be dangerous. If you see strangers that are talking to specific members of your group, stick around. Don't just leave them there to, have their moment. This isn't the time for that. This isn't a time to meet the love of your life, your soulmate that might actually be in Morocco and not here in this country. That's just not what we want out of this trip. We want everybody to come home safely, make new connections, see new things, experience new things, but at the same time do it with all of your faculties in place, mental faculties, not faculty members, so that you can continue to make those good choices. If you wouldn't do it here, if your parents wouldn't approve of it, if your relatives wouldn't approve of it, we don't recommend that you do it there. It's a violation of our code of conduct here, it's a violation of the code of conduct there.
And there's a responsibility not just to yourself and your own safety, but to the group, the well-being of the entire group. So your actions, whether you're thinking, well, this isn't a big deal, you also have to think outside of yourself and beyond yourself. How does this impact my group? If I go out, if I'm out late at night, or if I'm up late at night, well, I've got 2 roommates, and we all have to be up and at the door ready to go by 8 o'clock or whatever. So you also have to think of your roommates and how your behaviors are going to impact their experience. So it's
Quietest group yet.
If I could too add, I'm sorry, she pretty much hit on it. I've been out of the country several times too, and I know in other countries they tend to offer you illicit drugs, and I
yes.
agree this is not the time to experiment. The drugs, are going to be a lot different than what the drugs are here. Whether they're laced or whether Natalie Holloway, I don't know if she did or did not, but whether she had anything laced in her drink. So be careful of accepting a drink, and also anything that you see that is unordinary or that maybe like you think it's out of place. I also wouldn't tell your instructors in case that you think, don't think any little small thing is too small. If you think, this guy just dropped a backpack here, whatever the case may be, something that's out of the ordinary for you and you think this guy's acting odd, tell your instructors, let them make the decision of whether, that seems normal or not. That way you'll feel comfortable that you told someone and it's off of you, so.
I'll mention one other thing. The dynamics of a group. We've all traveled, whether it be with a family, family members or friends or whatever, and certainly that can create us sometimes to be on edge, right? I mean, things don't always go smoothly. You might have a delay or things happen. So that's just a dynamic, I think, where, again, as a group, you've got to work with one another. So I'll just resolving things at the lowest level. In my work, I find that had someone told me earlier on this had started or this had happened, I could have gotten the right people together at the right time and avoided things that then escalated. And so, I think we kind of live in a society too in some ways where we're afraid to say something or we're afraid to report something. And that's where you have to feel safe doing that. That people will use good judgment. So things don't escalate. Anything you've ever been. Because it's not you, it's other people that want to take advantage of you. that's what it's about, what sometimes when you're in different places. And we don't want that to happen. So I just.
We have an obligation as an institution, again, by federal law, to respond to any type of sexual misconduct concerns or complaints in which our students or staff are victims or involved in some fashion. So even if it happens over there, and over there can be wherever, and it's not on our campus, and you feel like you were sexually harassed, or somebody in the group says something inappropriate to you and you feel uncomfortable by that, you need to talk to your instructors. If you have questions between, like the dean said, if you have questions between now and then, feel free to send us an email, go through your instructor, give me a call, step in our office.
Hi, everybody. My name's Katie Hughes, and I work in the Counseling and Career Center. And I've also been on a study away abroad, or study away tour. So a couple things to keep in mind when you're traveling. One is get enough sleep. As college students, you may not be used to sleep, but you're going to be kind of shifting time zones. You're going to be on the go all day. You're going to have a great time, but you're going to be busy the whole day and then come home exhausted. Keep in mind that you may not need the sleep, but your roommates may need the sleep. One other thing that they touched a little bit with the Sudafed is keep in mind if you are taking any type of prescriptions, leave them in the bottles. Take as much as what you need for the whole trip and leave it in the bottles so that you don't get them confiscated, get it thrown out, and now you're going for a week or 2 weeks without what you need.
And bring a list.
Also, walking. That was one of the things that I was surprised with. I did a 7-week, basically walking tour all over Europe. So you might think that you're doing a ton now. Go walk some extra before you leave. Get used to, taking several miles. If you haven't bought your walking shoes, go buy them right now. Bring them in. I learned that the hard way. I thought I had some really good shoes, and I ended up visiting the pharmacies of Europe to buy moleskins because I was getting blisters, which is not fun, and it takes away from your trip. So think about that. Think about how you can start conditioning. The other thing is when you're looking at food, enjoy the food. Try it, but keep in mind, keep some healthy balance in there too. I once went on a trip with someone who was going to save money, and she packed her own Pop-Tarts. So she ate Pop-Tarts the whole trip. Sugar crashes, it was not fun. So if you talked a little bit about anxiety and things that might happen, you shared about getting delayed going through the bag check. Travel stress can hit you into a couple different areas, and so be prepared for it. Nothing's going to run smoothly. You may have long lines getting into the country. You may get in the country. When I was in Paris, we had 2 days of museum strikes, and we were there on an art tour. So that really didn't work well for what we wanted. When I was in Rome, there was a transportation strike. And so trying to get from one end of the city to the other end was stressful at best, and the cobblestone streets were not the best. So, keep in mind, give yourself extra time. Some of you, I know I meet a lot of students that haven't left Michigan. So this may be your first real adventure. So keep in mind, you may be getting hit with some homesickness. You may be getting some anxiety, and that's natural. Don't stress, but get some help too. Look at how can you take care of yourself. Talk to your friends. Don't be on the phone the whole time, but look at how can you Skype with mom and dad. If mom doesn't know how to Skype, teach her before you go. Some tips as far as when you start to feel anxious, what can you do? And if you already deal with some issues and you're concerned about, come talk to me. We can come up with a plan. We can kind of set some things in place. We can come up with some ideas. But if it happens to you for the first time while you're on the trip, what do? One of the first things to remind yourself is to breathe. Because sometimes it feels like your heart's racing, you're out of, you might faint, you might even die. Try and take a couple deep breaths if that's possible. Breathe in to a count of 4, and then breathe out slowly to a count of 4. Do that 20, 30 times. Just try to kind of calm down a little bit. And others may try this out, kind of like a guided relaxation type of thing. So think about starting with your toes, and just kind of scrunch your toes up really tight for a minute, and then let it go. And work your way up from your toes. So your toes, your ankle, your calves, your thighs, your buttocks, up to your shoulders, tensing your shoulders, and then letting it go. That's gonna help you relax. It's gonna reduce a little bit of that stress that
Question.
One other tip of how to deal with that is to try to do a visualization. Close your eyes and imagine a place where you are, where you feel safe, where it feels comfortable. For me, that's on the side of Lake Michigan, where I can hear the waves. Maybe you, it's home, maybe it's someplace fun. But close your eyes and try to imagine being there. Do some deep breathing. So again, try and get yourself out of that moment and try and calm down. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you have any health conditions that you haven't disclosed, and you don't want to disclose, maybe you have something in your luggage, an emergency contact, something that says, this is what to do if. So if you're found unconscious, they know the next step. Again, if you have allergies, having an EpiPen, again, some of that self-care. Keep in mind, I'm in a counseling office. If you want to write down my number, let me give that to you. So again, my name's Katie Hughes, and my personal number is 234-3454. And I'd be happy to talk with you, make an appointment, sit down, come up with
Eating.
some plans.
Does any of the three of you want to,
As far as the walking, he did 60 plus miles in 10 days.
I think it was
And-
67.
67.
Well, who's
in one
counting?
day alone.
She had a counter.
Yeah, I have a wrist thing. In one day alone, we did 11 miles. So, good shoes are very important.
Walking, get used to standing a long time. There isn't a lot of sitting, especially with Madame. She likes to be fast-paced, just how she is. So be ready for that. I certainly was not, and it made me very, very uncomfortable for one of the days. So just be wary of that.
So definitely eat your breakfast. If you're not a breakfast person, too bad. Eat your breakfast so that you can make it to lunch, and eat your lunch so you can make it to, because you're going to be needing a lot